So let's get back and talk about this piece of garbage aftermarket condenser and do a little comparison with the OEM. This is the same condenser. We had it blow off because it could not insert, and so the high side line blew out. They have the factory condenser OEM Toyota clips that they purchased. This is an aftermarket condenser. This is an OEM condenser. So I did a little more comparison. Just wanted to know. Inquiry minds wants to know. Okay, so I grabbed out the old micrometer and I did a more thorough, detailed measurements here. So what I found, the cooling refrigerant tubes, how many? Cooling refrigerant tubes, let's see if you can see it focusing over there, I wrote down. The aftermarket has 46 coolant refrigerant tubes for the refrigerant to travel. On the OEM, it has 50 refrigerant tubes. That's how many passages it has inside here. The receiver, I measured the receiver. The aluminum it took, because every penny they can save, the smaller and the less aluminum you could use, the cheaper the manufacturing cost. So this here was 133, oh, I didn't have it right. It's actually 133 or 1.33 inches is the receiver diameter on this receiver dryer. On the OEM receiver dryer, it's 1.26. Save a little bit. The smaller your tubing is, the cheaper it is. Fins per inch. If you can see right there, if it'll focus, come on. I wrote down. In the last video, I measured it out. And where you see the little dots right there in the last video, 15 fins in 1 inch. That's your fin count. You need the fin count to dissipate heat. The OEM, 21 fins per count, fins per inch. That's the OEM. So they cheat you on the tubes, they cheat you on the fins, cheat you on. Now this all has to do with refrigerant charge. The OEM refrigerant charge compared to what this is going to require are two different things. But they don't give you that piece of literature. Now the other thing we had the OEM line blow out of this line when I pressure tested it. And I couldn't get the line in there. The technician couldn't get the line back in there. We both struggled. We were hitting on it. We are not going to put a third condenser in there. They're not going to want to do that. So force fit, banging, pushing. He forced the OEM line with the OEM clips with the OEM O-rings into the aftermarket one and got it to snap inside here. So the fit, the machining, the way it was machined inside here, this is the receiving end of, and of course our Apple doesn't want to focus. There it goes. In the receiving end inside there, the measurements inside here are not like the OEM. This is the OEM. The new condenser aftermarket does not fit the OEM hose that well. It took a lot of force and fitting and finagling to get that sucker in there. I really feel sorry for this customer, but that's what this manufacturer does to their customers. Now, here's another thing people don't think about. This is where they really can cheat. The efficiency of the cooling tubes, they literally put fins inside each one of these cooling passages. So if you were to look in here, and if I could get it to actually focus, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and let's see if we can look in there. Can you see the fin? You see those little squiggly lines in there? Those are fins. Those fins are inside the tubes. If I could get it to focus a little better. There you go. You see those? That's a cooling tube. If you look out here, and if I draw you a picture, I'll bet you $1,000 if I cut this open and I count how many fins are in that tube, and I cut this OEM in half and we count the fins, there will be 50% less or even worse fins inside those cooling refrigerant passage tubes than the OEM. So this is what it looks like. I've done it 100 times and I've actually made videos and posted it. So let's stop making you seasick by me having this focus up high, put it back to normal. So this is what a coolant tube looks like inside. They're flat like this. And this is what I find out every time on the aftermarkets, because they can cheat. It's cheaper manufacturing and it's less cooling performance because you have less surface charge, and you also change the refrigerant capacity requirements when you do this too. So on the OEM, we're gonna say in that particular right there, in that little tiny tube, there might be 18, 12 little tiny fins inside the tube. So that means there's much more surface area for the refrigerant is in here, right in this low area. The refrigerant passes there. So the refrigerant has more wall surface to touch. And the more wall surface that hot refrigerant touches it, it transfers it in the metal right here, goes up those fins to the surface. Well, the surface has those fins that you see attached to the tubes, like this. The more of these you have, the more surface area you have going to the air to get rid of the heat. So the more surface area, the more heat you can dissipate. But in the aftermarket, they'll do this. You'll go in there and there'll be like 6 or 8. They'll do this crap. And that's all you're paying for. This costs money. This is cheap. This is less surface area. This really messes with the charge requirements. And this is what the aftermarkets do. And you don't see that cheating. But you can count physically what's wrong. So this is what we have going on by this manufacturer, and this is how they screw customers. And the insurance company goes, oh, but they gave us a piece of paper and they promised that it's OSI 9000 and it meets or exceeds the OEM qualifications. That's what I got to say to everybody who sits down behind a table, shuffles pencils, paper, picks up phones, and they were worthless turd their whole life who actually never works in the field. All right, guys. I'll see you later. Have a good day.